This debate is about the idiographic versus the nomothetic approach. So it relates to the way that we study individuals and the way that in which investigations or kind of psychology research is carried out. So you can take an idiographic approach, which looks at an individual, and you can take a nomothetic approach, which looks at a group. Now, this is because if you're conducting research, there'll be different ways in which you want to go about it. If you wanted to study something that was unique or kind of odd or very rare, you might choose a certain method. You might want to look for qualitative data over quantitative data. And if you wanted to create laws about behavior, so overarching laws that apply to everyone, you might want to take a different approach than if you were looking at a case study, and you might want to use quantitative data. So this is kind of where this debate comes in. It's whether you're looking at small, unique cases, in depth, that involve lots of qualitative data, or whether you're looking to apply general rules to everyone, and you want to look at a lot of quantitative data. So the idiographic approach is about the individual. It's about gaining lots of qualitative data, and it's kind of saying that everyone is unique and we cannot generalize to everyone else. Idiographic research tends to involve methods that will give you qualitative data, so interviews and self-report. They tend to look at small groups or individuals, so they tend to be case studies. So certain research will be idiographic, and then if you look at the different approaches, certain approaches tend to be more idiographic. So you could argue that the humanistic approach is an idiographic approach, that you look at lots of qualitative data from an individual. So that's idiographic, when you're just looking at an individual or a single person. It is assuming that everyone is unique, so everyone is different. And again, it's all just about this qualitative data to gain a lot of insight into people. So the humanistic approach is kind of your best approach here. You can argue that the psychodynamic approach is idiographic to a degree as well. These paragraphs will just kind of elaborate on those two examples for you. The opposite side of the debate is the nomothetic approach. So if something is nomothetic, it applies, it can be generalized to everyone. It applies to everyone. So a nomothetic approach is about establishing a general rule or a general law of behavior that can be generalized out towards people. So it tends to use quantitative data, and it tends to be more reductionist and deterministic. A really good approach here is the behaviorist approach, the idea that the common laws will apply to everyone, and from a behaviorist point of view, common laws will apply to humans and animals equally. So that's nomothetic. It will be seen as a more scientific study than an idiographic approach. So research that's nomothetic tends to be seen as more scientific than research that's idiographic, and that's due to the way that it's carried out. It's a feature of science. Nomothetic approach, it covers the features of science. Idiographic doesn't. This is just an example of how you can link it to the behaviorist approach, how you can link it to the work of Skinner. You can also link these sides of the approach to kind of real life things. So if you think about psychometric tests, so kind of pen and paper tests, psychometric tests tend to be nomothetic, so IQ tests tend to be applied to everyone. It would be more difficult to do an idiographic approach, because that would be, for example, from an IQ test, producing a different intelligence test for each person. There are idiographic ways to study things, but they'll be approached in a different manner than if you're approaching things from kind of a nomothetic point of view. This is an exam question. So you've got a STEM, a prison psychologist used an idiographic approach to study offending, and so on. And then the question is, explain how the researcher might develop the above investigation through taking a nomothetic approach. So in order to answer this question, what you need to understand is the difference between idiographic and nomothetic. The STEM has said it's idiographic. It's told you how the research has been done from an idiographic perspective. What you need to do in order to answer this is to take the features from the answer and apply them from a nomothetic point of view. I'm going to show you the mark scheme, and I'm going to show you an example answer, and then you can try and guess how many marks that answer got, and then I'll show you the mark scheme to kind of see how this question could be answered. This came up a few years ago in the exam, and in marking kind of the summer series of this, it wasn't answered very well by students. So it's something that's worth having a look at to just kind of see how you would answer it. So any STEM like this would, where it's saying this is a study, it's been done from an idiographic point of view, how would you do it from a nomothetic point of view? You basically have to go through the features of the answer and apply them in a nomothetic fashion. This is the mark scheme. As for any kind of 6-mark question, it's kind of 3-banded. That's how you would get the marks. Okay, so this is an exemplar response. So you want to have a think, is this meeting the criteria of the mark scheme to get level 1, to get level 2, or to get level 3? So if you remember the question, explain how the researcher might develop the investigation through taking a nomothetic approach. Okay, these are the suggested points in the mark scheme that you could include. And if you look through those, they are covered in the answer. So using more offenders, sampling in a different way, creating a hypothesis, collecting lots of data, using quantitative methods, and creating a general law. So have a think, how many marks would you give that previous answer? When it was marked by AQA, they gave it 6, and that's an explanation for doing so. So what they've done is they've gone through the features in this question and they've just made it idiographic. So their original research used 2 offenders. You want to use more than 2 offenders. They recorded their thoughts, so they recorded qualitative information. You want to get them to record quantitative information. This was only done over 4 weeks. You want to do it for a longer period of time, and so on. So that's what they've done. They've just gone through the STEM and they've just elaborated on the points. It's 6 marks. So as long as you make 3 points and elaborate on them well, you should be able to get the full marks for that question. The approach has also come up as multiple choice questions before. Here are some of them, and the answers are on the next slide. So the answers are here. So be prepared for multiple choice questions on this approach as well. And in terms of AO3, you want to really look at the strengths and weaknesses of each of the approaches, each of the sides of the debate, sorry. So when you're evaluating the idiographic side of the debate, you cannot generalize. The methods are more subjective, so they're difficult to replicate. You can't predict behavior. However, they're more detailed, they're more informative. You can look at causes for behavior. It's definitely more holistic. So nomothetic will be more reductionist, and you can create hypotheses later on. So they are all evaluation points of the idiographic side of the debate. In terms of evaluating the nomothetic side, you can generalize to the wider population. You've got objective, measurable methods. They're more valid, they're more replicable. However, principles and laws, behaviors might not necessarily apply to everyone individually, and understanding is sometimes superficial because you don't have that holistic understanding that you get from an idiographic approach.